Currently, I'm talking in English. Now, some of you will understand what I'm saying because your first language is English, but some of you will understand me because you learned how to actually speak English. Both of you will understand what's being said. So what's the difference? The difference is how we perceive a language. See, if you communicate in your first language, basically the language you were born in, that's kind of luck decided, but anyway, you're going to be able to say and perceive your language without even thinking about it. For those of you who are native in English, not me, you're currently just listening to me or what I'm saying and not thinking about it. It's like you just know the words without even thinking about them. But you who learn how to actually speak English, and if you're fluent in it, you will understand me, but not in the same way as a native speakers do. If you speak a second language, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like if you speak your second language, you don't need to actually translate words in English to whatever language you're speaking, but you still have to think, or in other words, be focused on what's being said. Let's make it simple. Take the first language, basically the one that you speak at home, as learning how to walk in the early age. When you walk, do you think about how you walk? Or maybe when you move your arms or grab things with your arms, do you think how you do that? Most likely not. You just get up, go pick that Coke from the kitchen, but all you think about it is just picking up that Coke can, but not how you're actually gonna walk there. So take this example as your first language. If that's your first language, what's the second language like? When do you actually have to think about what you do? Remember how I said the first language is like walking? Well, the second language, or the language you learned later in life, so for some of you, even me, English, take that language as skiing. At some point in life, you learn how to ski. Or maybe you didn't. But when you do ski, it's not like, okay, let's go down this hill and that's it. And you don't really think about how you're getting down, but now you gotta focus how to get downhill, how to ski down there, even though you can ski perfectly and know how to ski well. That can be compared to speaking the second language fluently. So if you can speak your native language without even thinking about it, but with the second or third language you can't, why can't you just learn two native languages at once? Or maybe, why isn't it possible to learn the second language in the later years as good as the native one? That's because the ability to learn something to the point of you not even thinking about it ends by the age of 5. Up to the 5th year, even if your nerves in your brain are damaged, they still can be repaired and even improved. After 5 years of age, your brain is fully developed and can be changed no matter how damaged or not damaged your brain nerves are. Before the 5th year, that's also the time that brain remembers the information given the fastest. Because it's not fully developed, of course. Because the learning process is so fast, that's why babies can learn the language so fast as well. After the brain's development is complete, yeah, of course we can still get the information and learn, but the learning process is significantly slower. Jesus Christ. That's also why once you learn your initial language when you're 2 years old, that's gonna be the language you're most likely to be speaking or understanding the best your entire life. When you're born, you're most likely gonna be socialized in the family of your mom and your dad. So you're gonna learn the language they're speaking themselves. But what happens if your mom is from USA and speaks English, but your dad is from Europe and speaks French, but at home they speak in English because your mom can't understand your dad otherwise? So now when you're born, you're hearing and learning two languages at once. And that's the case of being bilingual. Since you're hearing two languages, you're getting both languages learned at once. Essentially, that would mean that you're gonna be fluent in both languages. I don't really understand this concept because how are you able to just not think about two languages at once? Maybe a bilingual can tell me in the comments down below. Now, remember how I said the first language is like walking and the second language is like skiing? And how with skiing you have to think about how you ski, but with walking you just walk and not think about it? Then how would you compare driving? Because with driving, you learn it in the later years, just as you do with skiing, but you still can drive without even thinking about it at all, essentially being like walking. Maybe driving has to do something with driving a bike because you learn how to drive a bike at an early age? There are also instances of unsocialized children or wild children. There's actually a case of a feral child, and that's a young individual who has basically lived isolated from human contact from a very young age, and therefore didn't have any contact with human, so the ability to learn a language. Usually those are kids who have suffered from abuse or trauma, and they're then abandoned or they run away from a family. Because the brain is developed fully at being 5 or so, these kids will forever lack the basic social skills or even how to communicate. They would have trouble learning a human language, so in that case, their first language, it would be basically like they're trying to learn a second language as we do later in life, except that they're learning how to actually speak. Either way, since English is becoming so widespread, it's almost becoming necessary to know how to speak English. In this case, the people or the Americans or English people could be privileged since they have their own language as the universal one and they don't need to think about it at all. You could see this happening here on YouTube. For example, for me, since English isn't my first language, as you can hear by my accent, I need to make scripts just so I can actually know what to say. But with American YouTubers, yeah, sometimes they need a script, but usually they could just talk it out of their head because they don't need to actually think about how they're gonna say what they're gonna say. The language itself is made so that we can communicate with it. As long as we can understand each other, even if it's harder for some people to do so, that's the whole purpose of a language itself.